The whole goal of the festival is to encourage those of you who are in work in the areas of somatics and somatic learning, in the areas of movement from various disciplines, and to equip you further about the work that's in front of you for the work and the way that you're doing your work. It's a pleasure today to have for our welcoming remarks our president here from Stony Brook University, Dr. Samuel L. Stanley, Jr. And he's the 5th president of Stony Brook University, and he's the highly distinguished biomedical researcher, one of the nation's highest recipients of the NIH research funding, and also is an expert on emerging infectious diseases. So he balances that whole area of his life with also initiating areas such as the faculty and staff wellness programs and areas of importance to the health and well-being of the students and the faculty and the whole Stony Brook community. So his vision of education and collaborations with partnerships and technology and engineering, as well as his concern for the human beings who are here in their own personal and professional lives, is something remarkable. And so we're pleased to have President Stanley here. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Amy, and it's really is indeed my great pleasure to welcome all of you to Stony Brook University and the Festival for the Moving Body. I would really like to do something about the weather. There's many things I control at the university, but unfortunately the weather is not one of them. But hopefully we're not going to let that sodden or sog in any way our atmosphere today. So I'm so pleased you're here. And based on the program, I really anticipate a thought-provoking, paradigm-challenging, and I hope deeply satisfying opportunity to explore imagination, movement, and how they intersect to change the human experience. And I think it's right that we're doing this here at Stony Brook University. We're often asked these days to justify the existence of research universities, and the answer tends to be about innovation, STEM, health, or jobs. And of course, these are critical components of what we do, but they don't really begin to capture the breadth and scope of our efforts. No other places in the world bring together the best minds from multiple disciplines to explore the seminal issues of our existence. And of course, we also combine the knowledge and demonstrated scholarship of our faculty with the energy, ambition, and unrestricted imagination of our graduate and undergraduate students. And we bring that to bear on these problems, a power that is uniquely ours. The Festival of the Moving Body epitomizes this multidisciplinary approach and convening power as we look at and celebrate the power of motion in the arts, in the sciences, and in that fertile ground where they come together to help us understand our humanity. So as you begin this festival, I look forward to hearing of new insights into our remarkable bodies and their extraordinary capabilities that are inextricably linked to creativity and to health. Have a great festival. Thank you very much.
Joan is a University at Florida, Gainesville, full professor, and directs the Center for World Arts there. She's a dear friend and colleague for many, many years and has been an incredible just direct point of constant change and examination of the field of the moving body. So I'm going to let you look at her bio and see what's happening and get on with her beautiful talk that she'll give us. And welcome, Joan. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. And thank you all very, very much for coming this morning. And my apologies for getting caught midair in wind and rain and on some wonderful flooding. So it's actually quite sort of biblical out there. And many things to worry about in the world. Maybe weather is not one of them for this morning. We're all here, so I'm very, very delighted. And I wanted to extend a warm thanks to Amy Sullivan and her terrific team for their welcome here this morning. It means a great deal to me to be here, and thank you so much, Amy. The title of my talk today is Who is Not Human? The Festival of the Moving Body today will create a shared space to examine the vulnerability and strength of the body-mind in motion. Connecting from the inside out during these days, we will dare to move the body, however fragile or robust we feel, to assert our wholeness and reignite the forward momentum of research and practice in the field of movement. As a moving community, we will interface our unique voices, manifest our visions of the world, and redouble our aliveness together. To deepen our quest, I would like to invoke the wisdom and insights of several of the experimental choreographers that I work with in Africa, which would include Boisi Chikwana, Faustin Liankule, Beatrice Combe, you'll hear a few names, and also with a Cameroonian critical theorist whose name is Achille Mbembe. These folks propelled me to create a film called Movement Revolution Africa, and I directed and produced the documentary more than anything to change the visual image and to present new images of what it may mean to be an African today. I believe that the collective and individual experiences of these artists can rekindle our senses and inspire our walk this morning towards the festival. First and foremost, choreographer Boisi Chikwana asks us to always place the human before the art. He explains, circumstances in Africa where basic survival is still in question call upon artists to continue to seek out and to deal with the human condition. Thus, more than self-discovery, choreographic improvisation, for example, would be reconceived as a skill critical to daily existence. Observing his daily life in the Eastern Congo, choreographer Faustin Liankule has reflected, improvisation here is not an aesthetic luxury, rather a state of living, surviving. In such a hostile context, who knows what will come next? Another war, an epidemic. Indeed, now he's correct. One will need to know how to improvise to remain alive. The lives and works of choreographers like Boisi and Faustin deploy the moving body very specifically to assert personhood. Their works demonstrate with urgency the individual voice of the moving artist, whose agency exceeds the container of the body, sick or well, Congolese or Ivorian, tattooed or otherwise marked, but an individual, an agent, a person, a human being. The recognition of our humanity, indeed, is a matter of life and death. The sinister manipulations of personhood that have fostered genocides, slavery, still haunt us today. The lost lives of Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin in Florida, Stephen Sotloff, and the unnamed thousands in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone who have succumbed to the Ebola virus provide hard evidence that the world still seems to puzzle. Who is or is not human? Whose life, that is the life to be valued, the life to be named, the life perhaps to be respected, if not exceptionalized, and whose life might be abused, lost, taken, or extinguished without a trace of a name? What combinations of attributes of race, class, ethnicity, gender, religious affiliation, physical or cognitive ability, sexual orientation, nationality, language, or age confers the status of the human? In other words, that one who manifests a subjectivity just as our own, who might be our alter ego, who is not radically other and everything that we are not. Achille Mbembe reminds us the theoretical and practical recognition of the body and flesh of the stranger as the body and flesh of myself, that idea of a common human nature, a humanity shared with others, long posed and still poses a problem for Western consciousness. Enlightenment philosophers presuppose an indelible ontological difference, leaving entire peoples outside of the construction of the concept of universal man. Hegel wrote, "It is no historical part of the world. It has no movement or development to exhibit. What we properly understand by Africa is the unhistorical, the undeveloped, and the undeveloped spirit." Case in point, earlier this month, Dr. David Lakey, the commissioner of the Texas Department of State of Health, was very confident that Ebola would be contained when Mr. Thomas Duncan came to town and it was understood that he had Ebola. The rationale that was used by the health commissioner was quite simple. He declared, "This is not Africa." So by reiterating Africa as an obvious epistemological negation of quality, he raised his own quality to position his superiority as utterly unquestionable. Some weeks later, we know that he was quite wrong. And in fact, it was quite interesting that yesterday evening I was listening to a BBC broadcast that said, well, gee, if there's one Ebola patient and 2 people in healthcare taken down, our odds in the US right now are worse for healthcare workers than they are currently in Africa. Such an assumption echoes the theological hierarchy known as the Great Chain of Being by ranking life on earth from rocks to God, a ladder of human worth, legitimized slavery and subsequent imperialist strategies. Constructions then of concepts like the savage, the primitive, were formed by these foundations, and theories of race that became normalized by Western literature and science became sort of our go-to way of thinking, up to the point where in the early 1900s, there was an exhibition of Otabenga, a Congolese Baaka Pygmy, at the Bronx Zoo. Strange. The question of Hottentot Venus, Sarah Barcha from South Africa, also a person used to exhibit these sort of pseudo-scientific fascination with this idea of the primitive. So in many senses, this idea of the Western modern came at the expense of creating the African or otherized primitive. So the body, when hard-mortared by constructions of race, geographical origins, or gender, has very long and too long served as a measure on the sliding scale of human worth. For example, the death of 5.4 million people in Africa's World War, in other words, the Congolese Second War, may represent a rather abstract loss to many of us here in America. Can the art of the moving body actually dance hard enough to shake off our blinders so we can look more deeply, beyond the discernments we may hold of the other, and the discernments we hold of ourselves? For the sake of our own humanity, we'd better try, and we need to get to work. It's not to pretend that artists will single-handedly end suffering or discernments of prejudice or hatred. Art is definitely not medicine, but it is, to paraphrase exiled Iraqi poet Dunya Mikhail, an X-ray, a way of looking deeply, whether or not we like what we see. South African anthropologist and playwright Francis Nmoja reminds us we are born persons, but it is how we defend and enhance our humanity, depending on the enabling process of individuation that we can use, that we are able to actually negotiate lives for ourselves. And very often society, politics, economics, culture are mitigating factors, especially in the roaring currents of neocolonialism. The assertion of self requires an act of doing, educating ourselves and others, fighting for, making space for fresh narratives to be told by people who create the narratives themselves, unpacking stereotypes, dispelling unexamined holdovers, and rejecting ignorance as we find it. The abstract and fleeting nature of the moving body provides us a time-based carte blanche. It's a location in which we can examine and question positioning in the world, quite literally. And even if a resolution or answers are not truly possible in the moment, questions must be asked because it is the reification or the acceptance of these hard, quote-unquote, facts that truly deaden us and are questions that perhaps can liberate us and allow us to flow more freely. As John Cage said, I'm not afraid of the new ideas, I'm just afraid of the old ones. So in the liminal space of performance, we can maintain or unravel the status quo, question reality not only as we see it, but as we may wish to reimagine it. And we not only stabilize perceptions, but perhaps we can shift them. Claiming the sovereignty and vulnerability of the body, moving artists everywhere command a vivid and compelling reality where irony, power, fragility, courage, and fear converge deep in the bones. As the container of the human spirit and the container of what Faustin Leoncula has called the ridiculousness of art, the body translates our joy ever commingled with our sorrow. Our histories marinate deep inside the flesh, and the mindful articulations of the body can become our most dimensional storyteller. With visceral impact, the body articulates perhaps what is otherwise left unknown, or at least untouched. When beauty, or even beautiful ugliness, is expressed with full and complete agency, it can make even the most difficult of lives more bearable. Again, it is Mbembe who reminds us that beauty must exist, by which it is beauty by which human beings are brought to the most profound level of their symbolic faculties. Dance is already marginal enough to elude notice by many people, and power holders included. It is considered inconsequential by some, since the art of the moving body leaves few tangible traces, material which we can buy and sell. So in the marketplace, that entity, that thing, perhaps does not exist as a saleable item. However, through kinesthetic empathy with the moving body, the performance fires our imaginations to transform consciousness, a deeper prelude to change and transformation, perhaps, than what we buy and sell and maintain without life on a wall. All of this brought me to understand and respond to a new dance movement, which I saw developing in currents of urbanization and globalization in the late 20th century and early 21st century in Africa, which has been a research area of mine for quite some years. What excited me was an art form that I began to see that was very far from reinforcing a status quo, very far from reinventing traditions as they were. The fast-tracked artists I encountered appeared to be riding a sort of accelerated road into the future, a wave of shifting relationships and identities, which they sought to examine through performance. Since there was no real place, no concrete place, the idea of using performance and using the concept of imagining another world, another future, through the infrastructure of our own studios in our mind, as expressed by the body, was a great motivator for a whole new generation of artists. And it's to these artists that I'm looking today. As they created in their home nations, across Africa and abroad, excited audiences were drawn in, either in dismay that these artists somehow were just not African enough according to their definition of what Africa was, the primitive, the chattel, the slave, or perhaps through pure aesthetic engagement and an imagining of a future that we all share and could rethink anew. My film, Movement Revolution Africa, A Story of an Art Form in 4 Acts, illuminates several critical entry points into the complex world of these contemporary dancers. Through the greater context of the movement and particular viewpoints of such companies as Joan D from Senegal, Faustin Liankula, Studios Kabako from Democratic Republic of Congo, Company Cheche from Côte d'Ivoire, Company Rari from Madagascar, Lassina Coulibaly, Soleiman Badolo of Congo Bateria from Burkina Faso, Salapesa of South Africa, and other artists as well. Viewers of the film had a chance to sort of reframe Africa and the under-theorized term African dance, and to share in the excitement of this, what I believe to be a revolution in movement. If we compare those images to the images that we might hold in our heads after years of media exposure to the sort of gloom and doom of Africa, if we close our eyes for a moment, what are the first images that might come up? They are probably not things that display and portray African achievement. And in fact, you might open your eyes saying, well, African achievement might just be an oxymoron in those views. Thus, not only does the film sort of seek to name an African creator, an agent, but in so doing also address what I consider to be the numbness in our regard towards Africa. Popularly known as crisis fatigue or Afro-pessimism, this numbness entrenches itself in our approaches to international aid, formulation of foreign policy, business investment. We're just not feeling it. Our delayed start, in fact, to countering the Ebola virus also suffered from the numbness. We thought, that's them. They are not like us. That will not affect us. And of course, we are living in the same world together. In fact, choreographer Faustin Liankula has stated that the future is the most subversive concept that any African thinker can use. So when choreographic voices illuminate another idea of Africa, one that is fueled by agency with a sense of future movement, though small, I feel compelled to pay attention. Indeed, today, contemporary visual and performing arts have surged along Africa's urban and economic expansion in the last decade, which has been phenomenal. But indeed, these artists live in the paradox and quickly changing present. And with the force reminiscent of the force of the world music industry, these artists have taken storm. But the global arts market as well will now begin to respond to perhaps the go-to version of where we have considered Africa. So my thought is that we consider today, as artists, how we decide to embrace humanity and not allow ourselves to move back to a great chain of thinking and to move backwards, but still to stay alongside these artists and each other and to move forward. If just for a moment, let's join the artists to imagine a future in which all global citizens have an equal stake. Creating spaces for an individual to dream, even in the midst of ruins, even in the midst of destruction, even in the midst of Ebola. Their courage has produced countless examples of overcoming adversity. And perhaps we need these sorts of examples today more than ever. And perhaps, in fact, these are the artists ready to lead all of us. In their choreographic works, the artists have telescoped their immensely complex histories to the scale of the human being, of the person. The artist seemed to say, come, look through my lens. You will recognize perhaps what was previously unseen, unnamed, or unknown to you. Think of me, perhaps, as your alter ego. It is a matter of life and death, because we share our humanity. In one-on-one journeys through the folds and nuances of personal stories, the artists allow us to glimpse their personal stories from the inside out. Guided by the warmth of their breath, we enter histories long steeped in their flesh, whether standing down lingering ruptures of colonialism and dictatorships, negotiating the plurality of time and identities, or embracing love, as we all do, or recalling childhood fears or fantasies. Their works beckon us to move forward towards a shared future, hastened by the heart and inspired by the imagination. But that's not my world, you may think, if you were to meet them here today. But it's ironically oblivious, in a sense, when one says that, because we are complicit in their realities, both past and present, and in fact future, just as they in ours. In unexpected moments, we may come to know that the human experience is something we may take a new sense of and join in a new way of, and stand together with these and all of the artists that we know and understand perhaps as people and not cultures. If we can distance ourselves from ideas of pastness, ideas of separation, ideas of matters of customs, and newly embrace artistic practice as the way perhaps that human beings today can imagine and engage the future, we may come the better for it as artists and movers ourselves. Without such imagination, perhaps we will lose our own voice in history. It is true that the move from the hope of Africa to the starkness and brutality of the present has characterized much of the last 50 years in African post-colonial society. Likewise, earlier generations of dancers in Africa who were the products of hope for new beginnings when countries became newly independent became sort of riding on a sense of hope. Today, I would say the artists perhaps are riding on a sense of disillusion, once again wanting to move towards hope. And once again, according to Mbembe, this is a time where perhaps forms of absence, forms of loss become mixed together. But the silences and these sort of sinkholes of imagination should not be things that we worry about. These should be things that inspire us to fill and to question and to scope out and to feel the textures of and to feel the shaping of and to move together forward from these ruins of overlapping absences. Writ large, an African choreographic project undertakes the radical act of imagining Africa outside of victimization and frames cultural production as a sort of a mental infrastructure upon which we can construct new knowledge. And I believe this wisdom is for all of us, especially today in a world, let's say in the United States, where Faustin Leonkula, who will be in New York actually in just a few weeks to perform as part of his his world tour of a solo that he's performing. He likes to come to the US and he says, gee whiz, you guys, you're a third world of the arts. And indeed we are. Indeed we are. Arts are underfunded. They are not centralized in our society. So how is it that we too begin to build the strength of considering the infrastructure that comes from the inside out, that creates the sort of world and the future in which we want to live? Taking a clue from Faustin. If we do, we position African experimentalism as a wellspring of 21st century knowledge. and innovation as well that advances not only how we live, but perhaps why and with whom. I'd like to ask Rebecca just to introduce the artist with a bit of the film. We've got a few minutes. And indeed, in the moment between war and future, how is meaning to be made of life? Or the life we have left? Responding to the Rwandan genocide.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? Danse contemporaine en Afrique. Si c'est dans le temps, on est contemporain. Si c'est un concept comme en France, eh bien, c'est pas comme eux. On peut dire qu'on n'est pas contemporain. Mais on est contemporain.
Company Congo Bataria, responding to the loss and the encroaching Sahara that is taking all the water supplies.
I have to admit, I am the world's worst when it comes to interviewing dancers because I'm so intimidated by the discipline to begin with, and I don't know that much about dance, so I'm never quite sure what to ask. So what sort of things would you like to talk about this morning in terms of
Our
your,
marginalization.
Your innovations, that sort of thing?
As African dancers, I think we have the common things in terms of showing people that we are not only doing old tribal dances, but we are also doing things that are affecting us at this present moment.
Chercher à comprendre qu'est-ce que c'est. Pas dire oui, c'est la danse africaine. Non. Non, c'est pas la danse africaine. C'est la nouvelle expression.
Even though I can explain these things, there is always a point when all explanations are powerless, and maybe that's where something can begin to happen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kabako. I am Kabako. Again Kabako. Once Kabako, forever Kabako. Kabako is my name, and tonight I have a story to tell you.
Faustin Mankula, probably one of the great thinkers of our time. in dance. Thanks, Rebecca. Awake, the artist is impelled by the urgency, perhaps, of death, destruction, or doubt, to inscribe deeply, incisively, quickly. The moment of making reaffirms not only that one is alive, but that one is not dead. When no other foundation appears able to withstand the imagination of the future, the artist's story may provide a platform upon which to stand. Of necessity, the story the artist will tell is not an attempt to return to whatever was before. While the story appears at first a wobbling bridge made of remnants of thoughts, pieces of actions, bits of history, it is made for us to cross over. Even if an assemblage of ideas and actions appears to align to nothing that we know or don't know, the story may provide a conduit to a global future. Slipping through to another dimension of knowing, the artist emerges, driven to interrogate the shards of time, not to feed nostalgia, but to find new ways to stand, new ways to take a stand, new ways to make a stand, to walk, and perhaps run forward. Yes, run towards life, if by making a path, others also find their way to a future, there is provisionally no greater reason to create other than the yearning of your soul. Thank you very much.